When you see somebody featured in the media, whether they're on a podcast, TV, online article, the perception you have of them is they are there because they're a big deal. So just think, people will have that same perception of you when you get this coverage. They're going to think you're there because you're a big deal. And the thing is that you don't get there by being a big deal. You turn into a big deal by getting there.
I am just living my best life lately. I have been talking to such incredible women in business, and today I get to have another lovely lady on. This is such a good chat. My dear friend Christina Nicholson is on the show today, and she is my go-to expert on all things earning media exposure. So if you've ever wondered, what does it take to get the attention of the media, even if the media is something like a podcast host, or it could even be the Today Show. We're literally talking about the whole spectrum of media and how you get the attention that you're looking for your business and for your expertise. And if you think you are just not quite at the level that you need to be in order to earn exposure, then you are like a lot of people that Christina has helped in the past. She even helped me today because I think about the same kind of thing all the time. It always seems like, oh, I'm probably not a good fit, or I don't have enough experience yet, or I'm just not TV material. It's actually quite surprising as to the types of people that they're looking for. And so Christina wants to talk to us about that today. She's also got an incredible live event coming up that you definitely have to check out. She is the owner of the Media Maven PR agency and really helps so many different people and businesses get the attention that they want. And so that is who we're chatting with today. I'm not going to waste any time because there's so much gold in this episode. Get ready because there's some real details and practical stuff you can do right now. So let's get into it with the one and only, my dear friend, Christina Nicholson.
Christina Nicholson, welcome to Detail Therapy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm a listener and I'm happy to be a guest today.
You know what's so funny about this? I went to my chief of staff and I was like, can you pull up Christina Nicholson's previous episode? And she was like, no, I can't because she hasn't been on the show. And I was like, that's impossible. That's actually impossible because we talk all the time. You are the PR expert in my camp. Anytime I have questions, I always come to you and all the smarts of you and your team at Media Maven, and you just got done having an amazing call with my Amy Landino's Inner Circle group. I know everyone was just really feeling so much better about understanding what it means to pitch and get press coming out of that call. And I was like, wait, what? We haven't had her on the podcast. Like, we need that to happen immediately. So I'm so excited. I'm just as excited as you are that you're here right now.
Well, we did podcast together before, but that was you coming on my podcast.
And I think that's why I got confused. Content, man. We're just making it all the time. So I would love to talk to you about this with Detail Therapy because I think it's really fascinating. Just the subject matter of press. It's funny. I find myself watching even just like the normal traditional media and I'm like, what do they have to say today? Actually, I have to be honest. The only reason why I'm watching traditional media is because I happen to be at my parents' house right now and they watch it every single day. But it blows my mind how much of the media is storytelling that they got from creators on the internet. And I'm like, wow, it is really such a blurry line now between traditional press and really earned media and content creation online and how they're all coming together. And it's almost to the point now where you really can create your own press, but is it still really important to people to get that credibility of I've been featured by X outlet or this segment on this show? I guess what's like, take the temperature of small businesses today on that.
Yeah, I think it's important for every small business to earn media. And when I say earn media, I mean, you're getting exposure on somebody else's platform without spending money on ads. So there's three kinds of media. One is owned. That is the media you owned. Amy, it is detail therapy. It is your website. It is your social media. You own that. You control what you put out there. And then there's paid media, which is, putting a few bucks behind a Facebook or Instagram ad. In both of those cases, those are great, like perfect scenario, you're using both of those. But in both of those cases, that is you telling everybody, hey, look at me. This is what I know. This is what I do. When you get booked on a podcast, when you are interviewed for an article online, when you sit down in a TV studio to do an interview about something, that is somebody else saying, hey, look at this person. We brought this person here, or we interviewed this person because they know their stuff. They're credible, they're an authority. And it just gives the watchers, the listeners, the readers a different perception of you, because it's like you're getting that third party endorsement. Somebody they know, like, and trust is promoting you. So they're going to automatically know, like, and trust you.
Yeah, I love that. I love that point. But on that, what's funny is when you start to try to put your head in the mind space of, oh, yeah, okay, great, somebody's going to vouch for me. Well, if that's going to be the case, I need to do more. I'm not doing enough. I don't know that I would really fit perfectly well in a press package on a show or any of these things. I don't know. Don't you feel like there's a lot to grapple with in terms of how do I get ready from a mental standpoint to pitch myself to media? Because even if they say, yes, you are somebody we want to feature, and we feel that like sense of relief that we're good enough, how do we even get to that point?
This is like, I have good news and bad news for this. The good news is that it doesn't matter like how far along you are in business. It doesn't matter how much money you're making, how big your team is, how big your email list is, how many followers you have on social media. Like, the good news is that stuff totally does not matter. The bad news is that I am shocked at how many people have this perception that like they're not ready and they make excuses. And I honestly think, like, when I didn't even know this was a thing until I got out of TV and I got into PR, because in TV, when I'm interviewing people, it's like, I just need somebody who knows what they're talking about and to give me a good soundbite. Like, I don't care about anything else. Do you know what you're talking about? Can you speak in good sound bites for TV? Okay, good. That's all I need. But when I started doing this PR thing and helping small business owners get exposure, I was like blown away at all the excuses that they made for themselves on why they can't pitch this podcast, or they could pitch this one, but they can't pitch this other one because it's a lot bigger. And I'm like, but why? Like, your knowledge isn't changing. So why is it okay for you to be there, but not here? And I mean, same with online, same with TV. So like, you should not have that negative mindset. And I know it's easier for me to say than like for somebody to actually think that, but I am telling you, I have done so many interviews on my podcast with freelance journalists and people who have made the same changes I did from being a journalist to working in PR. And we all say the same thing. Like, the small business owner, the solopreneur, getting an interview from them is like gold. Because when you work, I can honestly say the biggest pains in the asses to deal with are those at the bigger companies, because then it's like, oh, well, let me get this approved by this person. Do you have some questions we could run by legal? And it's just like, it's such a pain when the super small business owner is just so excited to get the coverage and talk to you. They're willing to give you everything on a silver platter, and they don't feel as entitled as maybe the bigger business owner. So that's just like a myth. If anybody takes anything away from this episode, like, I just want to bust that myth. But again, to add on the good news is that when you see somebody featured in the media, whether they're on a podcast, TV, online article, the perception you have of them is they are there because they're a big deal. So just think, people will have that same perception of you when you get this coverage. They're going to think you're there because you're a big deal. And the thing is that you don't get there by being a big deal. You turn into a big deal by getting there. Do you know what I mean? Like, people need to see you. They need to know about you to do business with you. People can't do business with you if they don't know about you. And this gets you known because it gets you in front of people.
Oh my gosh. I love how you said that. Because I know this is going to come as a shock to everyone listening. But I am one of these people that says like, yeah, but like, what do I have to offer X TV show or X article in this publication, or like that podcast is so big. Like what could I possibly have to tell them or have to share with them that they don't already know? And so I think that mindset, it doesn't even, like you said, it has nothing to do with following or even what you've already built, but it becomes so seamless to you as the person that's been in the trenches for so long that you're like, yeah, but everyone knows that, like, and you just talk yourself completely out of it. So I can actually attest to the fact that I am the biggest poo-pooer of self when it comes to getting media coverage, because I don't think I've earned it.
I think that is, I don't know what it's called, like the knowledge curse or something, where like you just know it so well, you assume it's common for everybody else. But then ask yourself this: how would you feel if your competitor got coverage, like in a place where you would be like, oh my God, I would love to be there, and they got coverage there talking about the exact same thing? You would be like, oh my God, why them and not me? And then you would be like kicking yourself because you didn't get that opportunity. So you can't assume that everybody knows what you're talking about. And then sometimes when I am so oblivious to things, I remind myself like, this is probably so basic to the person I'm talking to right now, but I have no clue about, like, when it comes to like cryptocurrency, like I'm an idiot. I had somebody come on my podcast and dumb it down for me, and I understood it a little bit better, but it's like, I don't get it at all. So I need like the 101 version. There are so many people who need the 101 version from you or from me. And it's not only the information, but it's also the person. Like there's so many people who do what I do. There's so many people who do what you do, but we do it in our own way. We have our own personalities. And you also have to remember, like, that's part of it as well. It's not just your expertise, but it's your delivery style, or it's the way you're doing it. Like you're big on video with what you do. There could be people who do the same thing that you do that aren't big on video, or maybe they are a male and you are a female and people want to focus more on females. I don't know. There's just so many differences even between you and your competitors that I feel like to, as you say, poo-poo on yourself about like, oh, I'm not worthy of this. Like it's all just a negative story you're making up in your head.
Okay, so let's say we kick the negative story and we're like, fine, Christina, like let's go. But like, then how do you get into the right mindset for where we're headed? Because we also are very smart, especially the women in the room. We're smart women running these businesses. We know that we're not going to go, hey, we have the best product of all time, so you should let us, talk about it. We're pitching ourselves, but there's got to be some way that it actually matters. So how do you start to get yourself into the mindset of, I'm going to start to get on the radar of different media for different things? And actually, how do you serve a need? Even though, yeah, sure, I want to pitch my product or service, but I'm super happy to play ball before then. How do we get there mentally if we're able to compartmentalize the negative self-talk?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing you have to do is like always go back to your goal. Like, what is your one goal from this? If it is to get, and believe it or not, a lot of people have this goal, and it's to get verified on social media and to get the blue check mark. And if you have that goal, then you need to focus on traditional media, because you will not get verified. I don't care what podcast you're a guest on, they don't care. Or even if you're a guest on a YouTube channel, it needs to be traditional media. And you need to prove that, like, hey, I am popular for this reason. And I think it's because anybody can start a podcast and anybody can have a YouTube channel. So unless like you are the amazing podcast host or the amazing YouTuber, you're probably not going to get that check mark. They focus more on traditional media. But if you want to sell more books or build your email list, then I would go after podcasts and start focusing on, okay, who is listening to these podcasts that my audience is a part of. A lot of people will think about, oh, well, this podcast talks about this and I don't talk about that. That's got nothing to do with it. It's who is your audience. I got a baby product on the Rachel Ray show a few years ago. And everybody's like, well, what's a baby product doing on Rachel Ray? That's like, they talk about food and cooking. I'm like, okay, but who watches it? Moms watch Rachel Ray. So you need to think of the audience and not necessarily what the TV show or what the podcast or even what the website is all about. You know, if you have a local brick and mortar store and you only do business locally, or you have, maybe it's a local med spa or some kind of local practice and your business is very focused in that general area, then the local TVs and newspapers are going to be better for you than a podcast, probably. So it just really depends on what your goal is. And I think that's the first thing you need to focus on. And please, for the love of God, do not get distracted by like the Today Show and Forbes and CNN and all of those big outlets. Yes, they could help you if it's the right audience, but a lot of times you could be more profitable and see more ROI and profit from your publicity if you focus on something that's a little more niche, either in the outlet itself or in the niche that it's in.
I love that you said that, because it's okay for somebody to have the goal, like, I just want the clout. I really just want the blue check mark. And as ironic as it is, that social media only trusts traditional media to dole out these blue checks.
Isn't that funny? That's so true.
But do you know what? That is so true, because I remember I used to attend the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas every year. I think I did it for like 7 years running. And I remember really early on, it was like 2010, 2011. There, I went with quite a few YouTubers who were specialists in the tech review industry on their YouTube channel. But at the time, they did not consider a YouTube channel media badge worthy, because they were like, so what? You started a YouTube channel. It's a totally different situation now, because there are such legitimate ways of getting exposure to technology on YouTube, but it's just kind of the way of the world. So if you can say, listen, I just want the clout. I need one big Today Show feature so I can put it in my reel, get my check mark, and then I'll worry about, then sure, then you can spend all that time trying to figure out how you're going to pitch getting on the Today Show. That sounds really hard, in my opinion, but you never know. I mean, the interesting thing there is you could definitely get on their radar through someone else. I've heard so many stories where a business had no idea they were going to be featured because some expert brought them on as a product just to recommend without giving the product owners a heads up. And then everyone watching the Today Show went to their website and the product sold out in 5 seconds. And it was a kind of a huge disappointment, really, because you didn't know you were having that happen with you. I don't know if that happens these days.
It does.
But
No, it is. The example I just gave to you about the Rachel Ray show, we didn't know they were going to be on when they were on. He called me and he was like, we were just on the Rachel Ray show. And I'm like, listen, dude, I'm your publicist. I would know if I got you on Rachel Ray. Okay. And nobody told me. So I reached out to the producer and I'm like, dude, oh my God, a heads up would have been nice. He goes, oh, I'm so sorry. I should have told you. And I was like, okay, so how did this happen? Do tell. And he said, well, I remember you pitched me like back in the day. And I just kind of shelved it and I forgot about it, honestly. And then I saw this product in another outlet. And it's funny because this outlet, it was like, I think it was called Trend Hunters. And it just had a bunch of different like trends and, you know, gadgets and gizmos, aplenty, whatever.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
And so he saw it and was like, oh yeah, I have that product. And we have this like, it was called Human Lab on Rachel Ray, where they would try out like 3 different baby products. And he was like, oh yeah, I remember that product from this. Let's bring it back for that. And then the way they did it very organically. Maybe that's why they didn't tell me. They actually had like a mom who was a guest order it, have it shipped. And so they could kind of see the whole process organically. And, you know, not like contact me and we write, you know, a big, beautiful letter and everything else. So it was very organically done. So yes, that's actually very common. And a lot of people want to get in Consumer Reports, that magazine, they will never tell you. And that, because that is like 100% journalism. They will like ban you from pitching them. They do everything, spend all their money, like everything on their own. So that's very common. And You said being on the Today Show, you think that's hard. I don't want to say it's hard. I just want to say it's competitive.
That's a good word for it. That makes sense.
It's competitive. Yeah.
But if you look at how many, I mean, the Today Show is like 4 hours a day, isn't it? Or
And
3? I mean, like,
yeah, no, I mean, maybe even
lot.
longer than that. It starts at, they have the 7 to 9, then they have the third hour, 9 to 10. Then we got Hoda and Jenna from 10 to 11. So yeah. And every segment, and every segment's just a couple minutes long. Honestly, like you can't tell a story for longer than 1:30.
It's really interesting. Once you start to watch these things differently, like I am no longer a viewer, I am studying the business side of this. How many products were talked about in a period of 2 hours? How much time did they get featured? What was the context of that? Once you start watching how something is done versus just watching it for content's sake, you do really start to go, it breaks down some of that negative self-talk. Like, okay, this is a little bit feasible. You just got to figure out where your pocket is. Okay, so there's one thing. Now we know, like, if we want the blue check mark, we need some traditional media in the near future, at least. But if the opposite is true, and we genuinely just want to sell services, sell product, maybe those services are building your own personal brand as an author or a potential speaker. I think there's way more avenues to go down. Like, how do you start to narrow your focus and come up with a plan?
Well, for those goals, I really like podcasts. I'm not just saying this because we're here on Detail Therapy, but the engagement and the intention of a podcast listener is just so much higher than somebody scrolling online or having their TV on in the background, because you're taking the time to scroll through the app, to read the titles of the episodes and say, okay, I want to spend 30 minutes listening to this person or these people and learn from them.
Yeah.
So and then even just using myself as an example, I've done TV on a regular basis. I've been a regular contributor to many websites, and then I've been a guest on many podcasts. And when I look, again, my goal probably, if I had to narrow it down to one, would be to build my email list, to, talk about either my online course or my agency. So when I look at what I'm doing and how I'm getting leads, I would say number one is by being a guest on a podcast. And then after people listen, I look in my back end of ConvertKit and I can see spikes that are very relative to, like, okay, this was when my episode on Smart Passive Income came out. Look at how many more emails I got, like, in the coming weeks. It's not like a one-day thing, because you have to think of how you listen to podcasts. Like, you listen to podcasts that are 4 years old and you listen to podcasts that were just released today. So you could see the spikes. And then, a few months later, I'm on EO Fire. And then I see the spikes again. And those spikes, again, they last for weeks. And then a few weeks later, I get somebody who joins my media mentoring program. And I'm like, oh, how'd you find me? Oh, well, I heard you on this podcast. And then I joined your emails. Like, that is how it happens. And I think if you are an expert, an author, a service provider, this is the route to go, is by getting on podcasts for sure. And again, focus on who the audience is. Don't worry about what category it's in. Don't worry about even really the title of the podcast. Like, who is the audience? Who is listening to this podcast? Because that's who you want to get in front of. And I also think it's important, this is like a big mistake people make, and it drives me crazy, is that after they earn exposure, they do nothing with it. They're like, oh, I was just on Detail Therapy. All of Amy's listeners are going to hear it, and then they're all going to follow me and work with me. Well, no, maybe like one or two. You know what I mean? Like, a few will. But the way you make that live longer is you share it with your email list and you share it on social media. And when you share it on social, you share it multiple times. Like, I've been on podcasts. I've been in business for 8 years now. I'm still sharing podcast episodes I was a guest on from 8 years ago, because one, there are people who are just finding me on social media who don't know I was on a podcast before. And even if people see that I'm sharing, like, oh, listen to me on this podcast, damn well they forgot about that. Like, they see a million things on social media in a day, so they have forgotten about that. And it's just doing good PR for yourself. You have to tell other people, look, I'm getting coverage, because that also builds your credibility and authority. I think
Absolutely.
turning your media hits into advertisements is huge. Again, it's not just you telling people you're great. Like, look, here is me showing you that other people had me on their podcast or had me on TV, or here's an article I was featured in, and this is what I said. Like, there's so much to be said for making that media live longer. And I don't know, honestly, why people don't do it. I don't know if it's like selfishness, but like, I could never imagine being on your podcast and not sharing the episode with my audience. And I don't know if you notice this, I noticed this, but I would be shocked if on a regular people would tag me like, oh, here I am on Christina's podcast. And they tagged me and I saw it on social media. Like, it's so rare for people to do that. And it blows my mind because it's like the easiest thing to do. And when you don't do it, you're leaving so much money on the table.
You know what's funny? I think I made a connection when you said that in my brain that took me back to the negative self-talk. Like, maybe it's that we're trying so hard to not think about it as pitching ourselves to sell ourselves, because that's also something that people kind of have a hard time like being okay with in their mind, this idea of selling themselves if they don't feel very good about it. But then when you end up on a podcast and you're like, oh, good, I did it, and those people now know about me, you still think about it as an advertisement in your mind a little bit if you haven't really thought about all the possibilities that it is, rather than really great, credible content. And so you just kind of let it live. And it's like, okay, well, that ad's just running over there on Christina's podcast. And so maybe I'll see some things from it. But especially if you're trying to grow a brand as a thought leader in some capacity, continuing to let everyone know that you are being asked by someone to speak about something for free or paid or not. Show that off and let them know that, look, here's me talking about this. Here's me talking about this. Do you think I know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about that? Here's proof of that. And you're not just promoting the person's show that you were on. Sure, you're doing them a solid by doing that. You're promoting yourself by saying that where I spend my time talking is valuable. Here's what I said. Here's what you need to know. And yeah, you should think about hiring me, buying my book, having me on your show, and just continuing to make this cyclical effect happen.
And it makes the sales process so much easier because by the time these people come to you, they already know, like, and trust you. You don't have to tell them about yourself. You don't have to tell them about what you do. Like, they're already sold. They just need to know the details. And honestly, this isn't just for media exposure. This is also if you're a speaker, like, even if you're speaking at the local chamber of commerce, like, again, repeatedly share pictures, share video. I was speaking here. This is what I spoke about. Because when other people see that you're speaking about something here, or you're interviewed about something here, it will snowball and lead into more coverage that eventually you're not pitching yourself. People are coming to you because they see you keep sharing all of these opportunities that you've earned for yourself. They're going to be like, oh, well, if I ever need somebody to talk to about that, I'm going to reach out to you because I know this is something that you do.
I love that. I love that. Okay. So if somebody wants to get press right now, what do you suggest, like, their very first baby step is to start heading in the right direction?
Okay, well, we already fixed the mindset, so we're good to go. We already have our goal, so we know where we want to reach out, like what media outlets we want to reach out to. So then I suggest you open up a spreadsheet. I love a good spreadsheet. We don't need any fancy things here. And you start, just like if it's podcasts, for example, I use Podcast Clout. It is the software, but it's like inexpensive software. Or you can open up the app and you could literally go to a category. So if your audience is women in business making less than 100,000, maybe it's their side hustle or they just went full-time in their business, what kind of podcasts are they listening to? Probably things under the business category, marketing, entrepreneurship, things like that. So let's look at those podcasts and let's put the title of those podcasts in the spreadsheet. And then who's the host? What is the contact information for the host? Let's check out some old episodes. And really, I feel like your audience and my audience are very similar, that they're probably already listening to podcasts that they would want to be a guest on.
Totally.
Those
Like
should
this
be at the
one.
top, like this one. Those should be at the top of your list, because when you pitch them and when you reach out, it's going to be so specific. Like, you don't have to do your homework. You already know. So,
Yes.
like somebody, and when you reach out, I told this to your inner circle, Amy, you want to make it so obvious that that's the only person you're pitching. So like, if I'm reaching out to Amy, I'm going to be like, congrats on having baby Bianca. Okay. You obviously can't say that to anybody else, or else it's not going to work. So you want to make it'd be really weird. You want to make it so obvious that's the only person you're pitching. And don't write a press release. Like, I am so over the press release thing. It's not 1990.
Please preach on this, because I have to say something to those of you who actually listen to the show and have sent me an email, then please forgive me. But the majority of the time, I know for a fact, I'm getting a novel in an email from someone who really does think they know my audience. So props to you. But like, you're writing me a novel. I know you haven't listened to my show. Like, I know you haven't listened to my show. And so the excitement for my show is not there. And my excitement to talk to you isn't there. But the press releases, the long emails, the like super duper pitchy crud, like it's not going anywhere. It's a waste of everyone's time.
Yeah. I mean, think of our inboxes. The last thing we want to do is read an email. So if you're going to email us, make it short, sweet, and to the point. And just tell us like why my audience needs to hear what you have to say. And you sure as hell better make it different than every other thing that I've read before. Don't tell me how to build my business through marketing. Don't tell me I grew my business to $1 million in 1 year by using Instagram. Tell me something more specific. Tell me you built your business from nothing to $1 million in a year by increasing the amount of people who sent you DMs by using this one sentence in each post, like something that specific where I can leave that podcast and be like, oh my God, I know what to write on Instagram to get more DMs. Like, it has to be that specific. And
absolutely,
I want to be on the receiving end and say, I've never had a pitch like this. I've had a million people talking about building their businesses through social media or Instagram, but I've never had anybody tell me that they're going to like tell me how to do this step by step.
Absolutely. And the other thing I would say is that when you're trying to be personable, maybe somebody didn't just have a baby, but just saying, oh my gosh, I love detail therapy is not enough, because absolutely anyone could say that. I love detail therapy because I saw they get some downloads and I really want to be on it. Like, how about I love detail therapy. The episode X with so-and-so changed my life. I ended up doing this and got that result. Like that, now I'm interested, in addition to the fact that if you're very pointed about the advice that you think my audience would appreciate, like the example you just gave, I'm even more likely to care about it.
Yeah. And sometimes like you want to know about it. So it's like, oh my God, I want to know what you're talking about. So I'm going to have you on selfishly, just so I can learn from you.
Oh, that's the goal every time. First of all, I want to be able to get on and just like jam like this. I don't want to feel all buttoned up, and like, I want to be so excited to talk to the person that I'm about to talk to, even if they're not my close friend like you are. I want to be so excited because what you're sharing, I'm fascinated in. You've got to give somebody something to sink their teeth into.
Yeah. And I think the biggest mistake people make is they're just too general when they send a pitch. That's one mistake. Another mistake, like you pointed out, they're too long. Like, the point here is to tease me with your talking points. Don't tell me all about them and all of the details. Like, you just want me to respond to book you. When we do the interview, you can go into the details, but in the email, just get me like excited and wanting more. And the way you do that is by telling me something I've never heard before. And you do that just by being super specific. I always like numbers, like meeting some kind of numerical goal, or doing it in some kind of time frame, or if it's trendy. Like, I know podcasts aren't as timely as other forms of media because you can record an episode and maybe it won't go live for 3 months, depending on the host's schedule. But still, there are trending things that happen. Like right around now, we're seeing a lot of talk about the Great Resignation, an upcoming
Quiet
recession, quiet quitting, like things like that. Like those are
Mm-hmm.
trendy things that you could pitch. I have somebody in my media mentoring program now, and she's a career coach. And we're working on story ideas right now about quiet quitting and also like the job search, because I told her, I said, you know, my sister, everybody's talking about there's all these jobs available, but my sister's been trying to get a job for like a year, and she's highly
1,000%. There's conflicting arguments about the job
yes.
market right now.
Well, I was like, she's highly qualified and she's applying for all these jobs and nothing's happening. And it's like, that's because all the jobs that are available are like minimum wage jobs. And we know you can't live off of that. But these jobs that are legit, where you have experience and a degree and all of the things, they're actually very hard to get. So, you know, that's another thing we're talking about for story ideas. So you really just have to look at what's happening now. And you said, like, when you watch the news or you listen to podcasts, you're thinking like more so traditional media, because podcasts, you can kind of, it's, you know, not regulated like traditional media. You don't have to jump through hoops to get things approved to air. You're in control. But when you're reading articles online or seeing stories on TV and you're watching it from a business point of view, ask yourself, why are they doing this story right now? Like, what about this story made them do it right now? And you need to find that and then use that for yourself.
What was the phrase that you used in ALIC that I got really excited about?
Oh, it was the sign. Oh my God. Okay. It's so weird you asked me this today, because we're recording this a couple days after the hurricane. It was in my newsroom, and Wink News had to go off the air because they flooded. Their generator was underwater. Can you imagine?
Oh my gosh.
You're the TV station in Fort Myers and you can't go on air because that happened, I think, in Hurricane Harvey too. Wild. Anyway, it was that.
That's how you know it's flooded. A real hurricane.
Oh my God. And they're not even by the ocean. They're not by the ocean. They're by they're by a river. Okay. Anywho, it was a sign in the newsroom that said, new, now, next. What is new about this? Why are we covering it now? And what is next?
Yes. I think that when you said that, I was like, whoa, if you had to summarize what a member of the media has to think about with what they're doing in this moment, but also the fact that they've got to move on to the next thing, but they have to cover what's going on. Like, it's new, now, and next, and like really delivering the information that the person receiving the message needs to hear if that segment did its job. I really feel like that's 3 words to summarize how you do your job in it as a member of media, sharing a message.
Yeah. And I think also member of the media, like, don't think of like where I was as a full-time TV reporter. We're all members of the media. If you're posting on, and I really hate it when people say the media, and I use that in quotes because it drives me crazy. I did a TED talk a couple years ago about fake news. And I was like, I hate the media. And this is why, because we're all the media. If you post on social media, you are a member of the media. You may not be paid like I was when I did it full time for NBC, but you're a member of the media. And before you pitch anything, or even like when you're creating content for your blog or your social media, ask yourself, what is new about this? Why am I doing this now? And what's next? Because that will get you coverage if you're pitching the media, but it'll also get you more engagement if you're just posting like an awesome LinkedIn post or a Twitter thread, because it will just be so much more engaging to people in that moment, for sure. So just ask yourself that question before you create content or before you pitch. And if you can answer those questions, then you're definitely on the right path. And then I can give you one trick to making it newsworthy, because this is where a lot of people fall flat, because that's hard. It's honestly the hardest part about pitching the media, because every 3 weeks or so, you've got to think of a new angle, because the now part of it is no longer a now part of it. It's a then part of it. So think of what you do. And I'll give you a specific example of what I did with one of my mentoring clients. She teaches, you know her, Jessica Stansberry, because she's the YouTube. Yeah. You know, she's redhead YouTubers. You hang together. Yeah. So she was in my program. And so she teaches women how to build online businesses from home. And she lives in the Charlotte area. And we're like, okay, well, what can we pitch? about, because what you do, it's obviously important. You have a lot of amazing things to say, but why are we doing this story now? So we went to the Googler and we Googled, it was either moms making money from home or women making money from home. And then after you do that, you need to do two things. One, you need to change the filter to the last month. So you're only seeing things from the last month. And then two, you need to change the filter to news. So you're only seeing news articles in the last month about moms or women making money from home. So we did that. And then we saw a news story, like a traditional news story, that said 4 out of 10 breadwinners are women. So we're like, okay, perfect. Let's pull this information because this is a new study. It's new information. Let's use that to pitch. So we led with that. And then we said, and right here in Charlotte, you have a woman who is one of the 4, and she's teaching other women how to do the same thing. We literally pitched that on a Monday morning at 9 a.m. That's when we had our call. We didn't even pitch it at 9. We had our call. We pitched it sometime before noon on the same day, because at noon she was booked to come into the TV station. It was either a weekday morning or a weekend morning. Like, let me tell you, TV stations, they got a lot of time to fill in the morning and on the weekend mornings.
Yeah.
Came into the TV station. They led with 4 out of 10 breadwinners or moms here. We have a local woman, Jessica Stansberry. This is what she does. And she's got 5 points on how you can do it too, for all of you women watching.
Oh my gosh, that's such a testament to this is how you increase your value as the guest. You just do a little bit of homework for those guys that have to get the next story out. And that's such a good point. If you use Google, it's not about the top results. It's about clicking the news tab, and it's about limiting it to the latest, the last month or whatever you said, right? And just saying, like, what are people talking about right now that I can start to wrap my mind around? That's just huge. So what's new about this? Why am I doing it now? What's next? Keeping that in mind while you look at your spreadsheet, which I would just, let me ask you this before we wrap. We've got the names of the shows we want to be on this spreadsheet. We've got who their audience is. And so now we're looking at this and we're not just saying, I want to be on these shows, but we're also really thinking, like, who do they talk to? And starting to wrap our mind around that. What else do we need on this spreadsheet? One more thing.
Hyperlink what you're writing on there. Like, if they're on Twitter, hyperlink their Twitter. I got Amy Porterfield on CNN, and I know these bookers, like, they get a lot of emails. They get thousands of emails a day. So I sent an email, and then I went on Twitter and I tweeted the producer, the booker, and the host. And I tweeted them all at the same time, in the same tweet. And I was just like, hey, heads up, I sent you a pitch about XYZ. And that worked wonders, because we are more likely to pay attention to a notification on Twitter than we are another pitch in our inbox if we work for CNN. So that was like, heads up, I'm in your inbox. So I really like that idea too. And not just to tell them you pitch them, but even before you pitch them, follow them, like what they're doing, comment, just so you can get on their radar. I've actually gotten like really cool guests on my podcast by doing that. So I'm a big reader. I read a lot of fiction more than nonfiction right now. And there was one woman who became a best-selling author because she wrote this book about this woman was an attorney, and she was representing her husband who was accused of murdering his mistress. And she went on TikTok and she made these videos like she was the lawyer. And everybody thought she was really representing her husband who really murdered his mistress. And she kind of went viral on TikTok for this. And everybody's like, no, y'all, that's the subject line of my book. And her book became a bestseller because of like, they call it book talk. And so I was like, that's how I found her. And I was like, okay, I love your books. You're amazing. Come on my podcast. Tell me how you do all this. And she was like, oh yeah, that's cool. And it was all just because we go back and forth on Twitter. I've had so many people on my show just because I connect with them on Twitter and I love their tweets.
Can we go back? We're doing this full circle now, because like I said at the beginning, the media is paying attention to social, not just because I feel like they are getting some good content ideas there, but in general, they need to know what people are talking about, because that's what's happening right now. So to your point, you know what, we're going to give you a little bit more information in email, somewhere where you can get in touch with me privately, but then going to a place where they're clearly paying a lot of attention, like Twitter, that's very in this moment, up to date what people are thinking and feeling and taking the temperature, and you can get on their radar in more than one way, not in a pushy way, but in a, hey, just in case you looked here first. And yeah, really interesting, the different types of stories you might be able to narrow down your spreadsheet. If, let's say, CNN is on the list, well, CNN might be on there a few times because they're different representatives who do storyline, have different expertise or different verticals that they tend to focus on. So knowing each of those areas per person, I think, would be really useful too.
Yeah, like for example, with Amy's story, Amy Porterfield, when we got her on, we pitched, it was around May. So again, we're being timely here. This is the now part. We pitched, like, you don't need to go to college. You can take an online course and learn everything you want. But this was right before Mother's Day. And they were like, no. Instead, why don't you talk about how moms can make money from home with an online course? So like, we just did a quick switch because that was the Friday before Mother's Day. And it was so easy because I reached out to them on Twitter, but I already knew them because I was already following them on Twitter. I was already like I was already like on their radar as somebody who knows the show. And this was a specific show. It was between 12 and 2, headline news on CNN, and their audience was women. And it was a very conversational show. It wasn't like most networks are. They're not news people. They're conversational shows where people share their opinion. Don't get me started. Go watch the fake news TED Talk for my rants on that. But that, like the audience was women. Like we knew we weren't going to lead the local news at 6:00 with that topic. So you have to know the audience, because then it just makes everything so much easier. And yes, I know this may seem like a time consuming thing, but if you just block out 2 hours a week to focus on this, I'm telling you, quality over quantity when it comes to this. There are so many PR agencies. I freaking hated them. It's so funny what I do now. And I hated PR agencies and publicists when I was in the news. I hated them. They were so annoying. But let me tell you why. They will send the same email to 1,000 people at the same time. We're all BCC'd. And even if you get coverage here and there by doing that, it's not going to move the needle for you. The goal here is to turn the publicity into profit. And I can honestly, like in my 8 years of pumping my own tires and tooting my own horn by getting publicity in the media, I can tell you specifically which ones moved the needle for me in 8 years. So 100% focus on quality over quantity.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, that was a lot. I feel like people have exactly the homework assignment they need to get started. But if they really want the whole story, I really wanted to bring you on today so everybody could hear about what you're excited about, what you're working on right now. And that's Pitch, Publicity, Profit. Can you talk about this? It is your 3-day masterclass. Is that right? 3 days?
Yeah, it's a 3-day boot camp, just an hour a day. If you join the VIP version, then we hang out for an hour after that and do like more one-on-one stuff. But this is something that I used to do free webinars. And I found that when you do free, the information's amazing. I love it. People love it. But when I find that when you offer stuff for free, you get a lot of tire kickers. You get a lot of people who aren't really invested. Like if you gave me a free gym membership, I probably won't go. But if you make me pay for it and I don't like wasting money, I'm going to drag
my butt there.
Exactly. So that was kind of the mindset. So a couple of months ago, I was like, well, let me do this super low cost boot camp. 3 days. Day 1, we'll teach you how to pitch. Day 2, to nail the publicity. To day 3, turn it into profit. And I definitely overshare. I share like specific examples, like pitch examples, word for word, that you can take, copy and paste, turn them into your own. There's a whole bunch of bonuses. But the goal here is, by the end of 3 days, you will leave with a pitch, specifically a podcast pitch, but you could really, tweak that and pitch anything. You will leave the 3 days with a pitch and the confidence and the mindset to go out there and pitch somebody. We've even had people, the goal is to earn coverage in the media, but I've had people in the Facebook group say, oh my gosh, I got so clear on my message that I got a client today. And I'm like, oh, okay, great side effect of the boot camp. This isn't like a sales boot camp, but that's cool. Good job. So, it's super fun.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So this upcoming one, it's my second one. I just did the first one a couple months ago. We're kicking off not August. The first one was in August. This one's October 18th, 19th, and 20th.
Awesome. I know I'm going to be there.
You're
because
amazing.
I still have a lot of notes to take on this, and it's only 1 hour a day, which is amazing. And so I'm going to leave a link to it in the show notes because I think everybody needs to be there. This is, like you said, you can take away so much from a boot camp like this because you're getting a great deal of clarity about the value proposition that you really have. And so that's going to work with trying you on podcasts, but it's also going to work because you can really start to understand who you're selling to so that you can have conversations that feel less like selling. And I think that's really the ticket in everything that we do, is making it so much about the other person that you do this for that people are happy to pay you what they want to pay you. And I think people are going to be happy to pay for pitch, publicity, profit because people who pay attention. And they know that by joining us for this, they're going to actually make the difference in getting themselves the exposure that they want. So I'm very excited for the action takers who are going to be jumping in on that. We'll link to it in the show notes. But this has been a lot. I think people have to go do their homework now and get signed up for the boot camp. But other than that, I know they need to follow you on Instagram. So where can they do that?
Yeah. So you can find me at Christina all day. I post on the regular. I probably post things you probably
like all
wouldn't even
day,
care about. Like all day.
You post all day?
The reason for the all day is because
I've always
wanted
wondered
it
why
everywhere.
that's your username.
I wanted it everywhere, and I was like, well, I guess I'll be Christina all day because that's the one that's available everywhere.
Oh, that makes sense. The username struggle, man. I know.
Yeah.
I get
so
it.
Works.
All right.
So now that's what I am.
Christina all day. Go check her out. She posts all day long on her Instagram and all the other places. And that's now going to be a running joke. So,
I love
Christina, thanks for taking the time to being on Detailed Therapy. I'm going to be starting a spreadsheet today. I can tell you that right now.
You should. And this is something that like get your VA on, you know what I mean? Like if you just have one VA, like have them do it for you. Like
Data entry.
Take part of it. The other person takes another part. It's actually fun. Like go into it with a fun attitude. Don't get frustrated.
I love that.
Super fun.
I love that. The slow build out of your spreadsheet with your VA. Love it. Christina, thanks for being on the show. We'll see you again because you're going to come back for a second time.
Yes. We'll record in person. We'll do like a lunch podcast interview. So everybody will have to watch. It'll be a video lunch podcast interview.
That's a really good idea. We'll do it. Okay. See you then.